Hello, guys. I am so sorry. I know that I'm running late. Okay, so today this is Wendy, and we're talking about what we're doing in stitches. So, we are talking tonight about the different kinds of yarn, the different kinds of fibers, and it really runs the gamut from your silks to your cottons to bamboo, your acrylics. And acrylic really is one of the most common and most popular fibers that yarns are made of. This is your typical like your red heart and all of that sort of things. Where this one, let me see, this is a worsted weight, and that the titles, a lot of it has to do with the diameter of the yarn, the thread itself. So this is about a worsted weight, and I would say a lot of your baby yarn and stuff like that is about this thick. You can see it's not quite as thick as the worsted weight. And these would be probably considered a sport or a DK weight. And that's just as an example. This is, believe it or not, this is cotton. And you can find cotton in a lot of different places with a lot more variety than I think what used to be available. This is some of the cotton I don't like working with because it's kind of almost dry feeling, but you can find, as with anything, you can find fiber that's softer. You can sometimes you might find that red heart is a bit not as soft as what you might want it to be, which you can also make some changes with that by how you treat it, fabric softeners and things like that. And by the way, there's going to be people that tell you that some of the things that I say are wrong. I am not a professional. I'm just going by the things that I've learned over the couple of years that I've been crocheting, and this is a lot of what I've had to learn for myself. So, for example, you've got the red heart, and it's not super soft. It doesn't necessarily have the best feel to it sometimes. However, the Walmart brand does. It seems to be a softer texture. This here, I think this one is Yarn Bee. It might be I Love This Yarn, which you can find at Hobby Lobby. The texture's really nice and soft. They've got some really nice colors, and you can see it's got kind of a shine to it. Sometimes I like that, and sometimes I don't. So, if you see a pattern and it calls for a specific color of yarn, you can change that. You can change it to the colors that you like. Maybe you like the pattern of stitches, but you don't necessarily like the colors they chose. Once you know the stitches that you're going to be using, you can adjust that pattern however you want to. Eventually, you may even get to the point that you can change the stitches themselves and alter those. Let's see, now this is Caron Simply Soft. You can see that there's all sorts of varieties. You've got some with sparkles, you've got some with shine, you've got some that have this nice kind of earthy, woolly kind of feel. This one is the Lion brand, Woolies Quick and Thick. I loved working with this because it was so thick. It works up really quickly. So it's not going to take you forever to get like a square foot section because you got such big stitches. Considering that too, the yarn, the label, it's going to tell you a lot of things. It's going to tell you the size. This is considered a super bulky because, again, the diameter of the yarn itself. It'll tell you what size hook that you want to use. It'll tell you what size knitting needle you want to use if you choose to knit as well. However, this is just a basic guideline of your average tension, and we'll talk about tension on another video. If you use a smaller hook, you're going to have tighter stitches, and you're not going to be able to see through the stitches, and sometimes you want a more compact stitch. Okay, so we've talked about acrylic. This one, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the wool is yes, it's acrylic and wool and rayon. So they use a combination of fibers from time to time. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, this is an acrylic, but look at it. It looks a lot like the cotton. You really can't tell the difference in this particular cotton. So, it has to do with how the yarn is treated, how it's woven, all of that sort of thing. Then you get your textured yarns. This is, I don't know how you pronounce it. I think it's like Bouchelet or something like that. Anyway, you can see that the diameter changes on this. This can be fun to work with, or you may hate it. That's the thing. You're going to experiment with different kinds of yarn, and you're going to figure out, what you like working with and what you don't. With something like this, I tend to recommend something that's going to be a loose stitch, that you're going to have a lot of spaces you can see in your stitches, because when you get close stitches with something like this, you're going to have trouble seeing between the stitches and seeing where you need to guide your hook to go to your next stitch. So there's challenges, but it's worth it. It's worth it to play with it and see what you like and what you don't like. Now, this one too, this is considered a bulky yarn, and so is this. This is considered a bulky yarn because the diameter throughout the entire skein of yarn changes. I'm trying to find a good example of that. See right here, it's very thin, right there, very thin. But then in a later place, it's going to almost double in that thickness. So they consider this particular yarn a bulky yarn. This is super bulky. This is bulky, and so is this. You can see that there's a big difference in the diameter of these two yarns, but they're both considered bulky. So, it's kind of like blue jeans. You got to look at what you're working with. Just know that if it's saying that it's bulky, you're going to have some maybe some variety in the diameter and the width of the yarn itself, or you just really have to take a look at it. But it's something that you kind of want to trust the manufacturer a little bit, but you can see with your eyes. You can see with your eyes, what the appearance is, what the feel is, and that's a lot of it, folks. That's a lot of it. Is picking things based on how's it feel to you. Do you like the colors? Do you like the feel and texture? Maybe you're not particular. You're buying the Red Heart because that's what you can afford. It's 99% of us start out with Red Heart. Nothing wrong with it. You will run across yarn snobs that say they only work with natural fibers, and if that's their stance, that's fine. But for me, I don't feel like it's necessary to exclude anybody. I don't think that someone who crochets with 99-cent yarn is any less valid than someone who crochets with yarn that is hundreds of dollars. It is about being creative and in doing what you love. Now there's yarn clubs that you can join. This is Darn Good Yarn. I got that from them, where you can subscribe and get every month you get a different yarn. You can buy skeins of yarn there as well. This is actually called a hank, where you get a yarn that is woven and twisted like this instead of in a skein. This is a skein, this is a hank, and of course what a lot of us are familiar with when we take it apart and roll it into a ball. Well, that's a ball. It seems kind of common sense, doesn't it? Now see with a hank, I'm going to go over this because it's important. With a hank, it's braided and it's tucked in, okay? I want you to see this because I need you to know what you're getting into. So that hank untwists into this long strand. then, I don't know if you can see it, but it's tied along the way by little strings. When you get into this, you're going to cut those strings. So you're going to end up, I'm not taking it apart, trust me. What you're going to end up is with a fairly, let me see if I can keep from bumping that, a fairly large loop of yarn. You're going to need help with that. You're going to need someone to hold the yarn like this, from end to end, stretch it out, while you take the strand and you wind it into a bow. If you do try and do it on your own, you're going to end up with a mess. I guarantee it. I tried it, and I sure enough did. I made a mess. I tried to do it on my own. I don't recommend it. This particular hanks of yarn are usually hand dyed. This one has beads woven into it. I just kind of fell in love with it. I want to make a shawl with it, which I was really intimidated with working with yarn or thread of this diameter, but it's not bad. It really isn't. It's not bad at all. So, there's going to be some challenges. Step up to the plate and try it. Maybe you won't know whether you like it and whether you're good at it until you try it. So yeah, my main point in doing this is in knowing that you're not limited. You are, if you want to stay with one kind of yarn, that's what you like, with what you love, that's what you want to start with, absolutely do that. But there's a million different things that you can do with the yarn, and a ton of different yarns you can work with. Sometimes the muted colors are really nice when you want to work earth tones, and maybe something for a guy, or there's just so much potential for any of these. So if you have any questions about yarn and the uses and so forth, go ahead and drop me a line. Again, I'm really sorry that I'm late tonight. I kind of got sidetracked cooking chicken and making fruit salad and things. But anyway, so yeah, drop me questions in the comment section, and let me know if there's a particular yarn you want to know about, or if you want to show us pictures of things that you've done with a particular yarn that you liked or didn't like. We'd be glad to see them. I think next time what we'll talk about, what we'll work on, is chains. Almost every piece that you start with is going to be started on a chain. But there's tricks. There's things that are going to make it easier for you. It's going to make your piece easier to work. So there's some advanced chain methods, but we'll start again. We're going to start with the basics, and we'll build up from there. All right, so this is what we're doing in stitches. Have a good night.